What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Evening Alpha. I am your host, Todd Wanish, 26 plus year veteran of comics and animation and Web3 and startups and all kinds of crazy stuff nowadays. Welcome. So if this is your first time joining us, let me give you a little bit of a tip of about what you're going to watch. What is Evening Alpha? So Evening Alpha is, unlike other shows, we're not necessarily an interview show. What we are is a founder to founder coffee talk conversation. So this is unfiltered. It's a talk between two founders. I'm the founder of not just Evening Alpha, but Adult Fantasy, which is a comic and animation project. And we talk to other founders about not just their project, but what is going on in the wider NFT market, what is going on in Web3. So it's an opportunity for all of us, myself included, to learn from other founders who are at the bleeding edge of creation to learn how they're building, how they're launching, and how they're growing really in the future of this technology and our culture at large. So with that said, I am super excited today to be talking to a phenomenal project, something that I saw. It's got phenomenal art, phenomenal talent. I'm just excited to learn more. So I want to welcome Riley from Pinballer. What's up, man? Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Todd.
Yeah, man. So absolutely, dude. So first question, like what is Pinballer?
What is Pinballer? It's a sci-fi tale about a punk rock star who has these superhuman powers, and he can essentially fire pinballs from his fingers. He had this kind of special blood that I can get into more later. And then when he was a child, he had this accident with a pinball machine, and the pinball shot him through the heart. And then he's kind of infused with these powers of being able to fling pinballs at people, which is pretty cool. And in the first issue, he meets this another crazy metahuman who fancies the pants off him, and she wants to have these super powered babies with him. And she has her own unique set of skills. Namely, she has the ability of being able to, she's a speedster essentially. But when I was writing it, I thought, well, I can't just have a speedster because there's so many speedster super hits. So how can I put my own kind of strange, twisted spin on this? And so the idea came about that she could actually make her vocal cords vibrate at high speed and create these weird sounds that could then make people crap themselves. Basically, she can vibrate your bowels and cause these intense bowel movements. And so yeah, she's got her own unique set of skills, and she gets Pinball into a whole heap of trouble, and then they end up getting kicked off the space station and then going on a whole crazy adventure together.
That's awesome, man. So what, like, and I think one of the things that I'm always curious about is, well, there's a couple things. First, what led you to NFTs, and then really because it's comics are a real specific thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there are a lot of projects in the NFT space have comics on the roadmap almost as what I think, and this is my own interpretation, sort of as an easy milestone to hit, right? It's like, oh, okay, we'll release the comic and then we'll do other things. So you'll see a large number of projects do a comic on the roadmap. A lot smaller, much smaller in the quantity of projects say we're going to do more than one comic, right? And there's even smaller number that says we do comics. So I'm curious both as to like what made you decide like comics, whether that's in your background or what have you, and then why also wrap that into NFTs as opposed to doing like crowdfunding or going to a traditional publisher or something like that.
That's a really big question. You're gonna have to you're gonna have to kind of corral me back if I get off the subject, because I'm a big waffler and I will waffle and waffle. So I first got into NFTs around the back end of 2018, start of 2019. And I saw the potential then. I didn't pursue it as much as I should have done, but I got into a card game called Gods Unchained, and I also got into the Sandbox around that time. And I could see the potential coming in then and there. The idea of people, especially with the Sandbox, the interoperability and the capabilities for people to create their own universes, their own game worlds, and invite others in. And if they want to charge for that game, they can do. And if not, then they can do that too. And I just thought this is a wonderful vision of the future. And then as time went on, I kind of disappeared from NFTs for a long time. And then with the whole PFP craze, I got back into it. And then I started to think to myself, well, you could actually do more than this. You could create your own stories and you could build IP that way. The thought came into my head, I love Batman. And so who wouldn't want to create their own Batman if they could? And obviously, yeah, it's not for everybody. I say who wouldn't want to, but obviously there's lots of people that aren't comic book fans. But for me, it's a big thing. I've got a mad imagination. It's always whirring. It's always on the go. I'm a storyteller, really. I've come from a unusual background. I've done lots of jobs, but the biggest passion has always been film and photography. I've made music videos. I've been a fetish photographer for some time. I've photographed bands. I've photographed lots of different industries. And the idea always that inspires everything that I do, the photographs or the videos or anything, is always about storytelling. Now with comics, it's brilliant because you might have a story in your head, but the story in your head, unfortunately, is like $100 million budget, and I can't afford to do that, and just go and make that film. But with a comic, I can make that the highest budget thing you've ever seen. And it looks wonderful and it's fantastic. And these ideas in my head have come to life on the page. Maybe one day in the future, I can turn that into an animated series or even a live action film. But for now, they've come to life on the page. And so that's why comics really hit home for me as the best medium for me, because I'm very much a visual storyteller. I've come from that background, and comics are the natural transition for me, without having $100 million budget to do the film.
Yeah, that was what always attracted me. It was the fact that with film, you're only in control of so much, right? Like it's such a big operation that it takes hundreds of people. It takes thousands of labor hours, and you have to have the budget for it, right? And of course, when you have the budget, you're answering to other people as well, right? Like there's always going to be an editor.
It never looks as good as you expect.
Right. It's too impossible. It's very hard. It really, if people knew how difficult it was to make a good movie, they would be shocked, I think, at how difficult, just with the editing process, and you're trying to serve so many masters between producers, executive producers, a studio. It really is kind of incredible when fantastic movies emerge. You know what I mean? And sometimes they're by accident. It really is an art in that way. Like you start to make a masterpiece and it turns out like shit. And then other times you're like, well, this might be okay. I'm just doing it for the paycheck. And then all of a sudden it's a masterwork. It's just, you don't ever know what's going to be your best thing. Right. And so I really liked the two things that I was really attracted to with comics initially was that the fact that you could, you didn't have to have $100 million budget. You just had to have the imagination for it. I mean, it's the most extreme medium because you're taking tools that are the most basic and the most primal. It's literally a stick and a reed of paper. You know what I mean? Like, from cave drawings, right? And then all of a sudden taking it to the vast future where you don't really have any kind of limitation except of what your skill level is and what you can imagine. And so that was one thing that I was really attracted to. The other thing that I was attracted to from the professional side was I really was enamored by, you know, the the time the time that it takes to make a comic is pretty extreme, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're working pretty much all day, every day. To do a monthly book, you're working all day, every day. I mean, we're talking like minimum. I mean, 15 to 17-hour days per page for pencils. If you're splitting up pencils, inker, colorist, that kind of thing. There are people that can do all of those, and they have to simplify their styles to get it done on time. But usually, it's like a page per day and whatever in the drawing stage. And I was really enamored with the idea that if you did it professionally, you actually could have a really unique discography that would track every single motion you made, every single mark you made, every single day for your entire life. Right? Because it's there, it's on the page. Every single hour, minute, second that you're working is actually visible in a published way. And if you did that for a career, you would have documentation of your life. Right?
Absolutely.
Now, granted, that was a lot of the 20-year-old Todd, and not the 40-year-old Todd that wants a day off and wants to hang out in the pool on the weekend. But you know, so do you have a background in comics, or did you say, hey, screw it, comics is cool, let's go for it?
The only background I've got in comics is reading them.
That's so cool.
That's it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
For me, video and photography. So I'm used to kind of storyboarding my ideas. I'm used to being the storyteller in that sense behind the camera, but nothing like this. No.
So
very new.
So is Pinballer, is the comic kind of like a gateway drug to the rest of the universe that you're creating? Like, it's not just a one-off, right? Because I know you're looking at other things like Sandbox and VR and all these other kinds of things. So is this sort of like a gateway drug to start the launch, or like how do you see this stuff rolling out, kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like going back to the Batman example, you know, you don't just have Batman comic #1 and then that was it. You know, I want to create something here of real value. I want to build an IP.
Yeah.
And that's kind of snowballed into something else, which is the Launchpad, which we can talk more about later. But the idea is to build this IP out. And yeah, if I can turn this into an animated show, a film, etc., then absolutely that's what I intend to do. So far, we've got issue 1 out. Issue 1 is in a fantastic game called Lo-Fi. That's coming out on PS5 and Xbox, and it's currently in early access on PC. It's a beautiful Blade Runner-esque game, really incredible. Best viewed in VR. One of probably the most atmospheric, best game world I've seen, hands down. And you can read the comic in there now. You can go and read Pinballer in that world, which is, you know, for me, I'm a
That's awesome.
I'm a Blade Runner like nerd.
Hell yeah, oh yeah, me too, man. Director's cut all the way, man. Yeah.
So to be able to see, you know, Pinballer in that world is just like, oh my god, it's just amazing.
So it's like a product placement.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, I would say it's more about further adding to the atmosphere of that game, because it is a real comic that you can read in the game. So you're wandering around the game world, you might be you're a detective, you might be solving a crime, and then you go into a diner and then the comic's there on the table. Okay, I'm gonna have a read of that. So you can have a read of the comic while in that world, and you're soaking up the atmosphere, and you're just chilling out in a diner reading the comic.
That's so
cool. And then you go about your business.
How did you land that? Did you just reach out to these guys and were you just like, hey, so I got this comic and your game's is awesome?
Yeah, so I've always loved lo-fi. As soon as I saw it, I was in love with the game. I reached out to the big head honcho behind it and said, you know, I love this. Is there any chance, you know, that you could perhaps if I can put some budget to one side, could you build something for me with this comic? And he took a look at the comic and he said, "Oh my God, I love the comic. It's amazing." And he's a huge comic book fan.
Nice.
So obviously that helped.
Yeah, that
And
helps.
then we talked a little bit about the idea of him building something for Pinballer. So that's something that might come in the future as well. Maybe from his team, maybe from another team. We don't know. We'll have to, talk some more about it. But one idea for the Pinballer comic was to have a burn of the comic for a Star God pinball table NFT, which would allow you to go into a standalone game experience, Voola ship, play pinball, display your NFTs, hang out, read the comic in there on the ship, and it's just a cool atmospheric, thing. And then we could keep building to it and add to it the more, we develop everything. So he said, put a pin in that idea for now. I really want the comic in the game. So I was like, oh my God, I'd not even thought of that. That's brilliant. So he put the comic in the game, and he wants the other comics, the other issues in the game. So they'll be dotted about the city, and you'll be able to go and read the comics in these different locations.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. I love how and it's something that I've noticed too. It seems like a lot of people in this space, and even in areas, because that's not traditional Web3. It's a traditional video game, right?
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
But it's been really interesting how open people are to sharing right now, and partnerships, and joining up, and kind of sharing resources and ideas and tips. And I love it, man. I love, like, it's something, it's kind of like a dream come true for a creator, right? Because without mentioning other markets or mediums, I can't think of another, and I've been doing this a long time. Usually when you email somebody or you DM somebody or whatever, from another business or another space, and you say, hey, I have this thing, would love to partner, the answer is either you get ghosted and nothing happens, or you get like a polite no, or some form letter that says, hey, thank you so much, we love hearing from our fans, but it's like they clearly didn't even read the letter, and you're just like, okay, well, this didn't work. So it's really fascinating that there's something about right now with Web3, very much like the early days of the internet, where people are okay with sharing and okay with partnering up, and there's a low, I don't know what to call it. I feel like it should be a technical term, like low elitist score. You know what I mean? Like, there's a very low elitist score right now. You certainly have people that are kind of elitist, or that are never going to pick up, or influencers or whatever. But for the most part, from the founder level, so many people are open and ready to share and help and trade and collab, and I love that. And I hope it picks up. I hope it doesn't stop.
Sure. It's almost like we're all mates. It's very matey, isn't it? It's like,
it is.
Hi, mate, I'm doing this and you're doing that. It's really cool. Can we kind of do something together? Can we work on it? Yeah, sure, that's fine. And everyone's cool, and they jump on the Twitter Spaces, and everybody's hanging out, and it's fantastic.
It really is. It's true. I mean, most of the time when we're doing evening alphas, it's at night, and it's everyone drinking whiskey or something. So it's like, it's just completely relaxing, and it's really a really cool thing. We got a couple people in chat. Carrots, what's up, man? Welcome. Hey, gang. Whistle Piggy has some good questions. He says, would love to see an animated Pinballer series.
Me too. Yeah. I've looked into the costings for the Pinball animated series. They're a bit out there for the time being, but I'm working towards it. I will do everything I can to get that off the ground.
Yeah, I've been an animator and an animation director for a very long time now, decades. And when we first launched Adult Fantasy, one of the first questions we got was, well, why don't you guys have animation on your roadmap? And I said, because I've done this for a long time, and I know the cost, because I do it professionally. Like, when animation becomes on the roadmap, it's going to be because we're ready to really do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
too hard, too easy to promise something without delivering, and I can't do that. Whistle Piggy says, did they tie the gameplay to the comic for clues? Oh, that's a good question.
Now that is a good question, and as far as I'm aware, no, they haven't done that. I think that would be, yeah, I'm not sure how they would do that, but yeah, that is a good question. I'll perhaps put that to him. Certainly when we bring out more comics and the other comics get into the game,
That
that could be
that is pretty cool though, that you can just walk into a random diner or a random environment, and all of a sudden you see the comic on the table, and it's sort of a discoverable moment, because I'm sure there are plenty of people that walk by it and don't notice it, and then you have
yeah.
people that discover it and it's like, oh my god, this is so freaking crazy, like, you know.
It's texture, and it's something that I share in common with Blair, the guy behind the game, and it's something that I share in common with Ridley Scott with Blade Runner. It's all about adding layers and texture and texture and texture onto these worlds to make it so that they feel real, and you could live there. I love that, because it feeds my imagination. I'm a daydreamer, so I love the idea of being able to get lost in these worlds. And lo-fi is that, Blade Runner is that, and I'm doing my damnedest to make sure that Pinballer is that too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's all of us, right? It's you daydream it, and then you're like, okay, I have to make it real.
Yeah.
Okay, now that I daydreamed it, I have to like spend the next 6 months or a year or 5 years or the rest of my life making it happen. Yeah. Whistle Piggy says it was so cool of Pinballer to provide people to have their PFPs to be part of the comic cast. What's that
launch
about?
pad? Yeah, that's the launch pad I mentioned. That came about fairly early on, when I could see how much the community loved the idea of being able to take their PFP project and make something for themselves, build their own IP, rather than just have this bloody picture and you don't do anything with it. You make it your profile picture and then that's it. And then other people have bought a load and they're flipping them, and there's nothing wrong with that. By all means, go ahead. I've flipped PFPs too, but there's got to be more more to it than that. We've got to do something with these, because that's the promise of Web3, isn't it? And everything that is out there in the space, the idea that we can build something together and we can come together as a community. That's what I love. And so we started to develop the idea of Launchpad, thinking that not only would we be launching Pinballer, but we'd also be helping other people to launch their stories too. So we ran a competition. We had 2 winners, and their story, they wrote a brief synopsis. I asked them to, give me as much detail as they wanted to see in their own little mini comic. And then I reworked it and added dialogue, and then, got artists in to help bring it all to life. And we're coming to the end stage of that now. So we're, in the next month or so, we'll be releasing issue 2, and issue 2 will be the first one with these 2 community-driven IPs, basically. So the Launchpad begins in issue 2, which I'm really excited about, because it's now become this big community deal, as opposed to it's just Pinballer. Now it's a universe, it's a compendium. The comic is a compendium, and we're seeing new stories come out. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, that's something that we are working on. That's one of our main drivers is going in that direction as well, and that's actually one of our big Q3 goals is to get that component of it launched. And I'm curious, because one of the things that we've been working through, and I'm curious to know how you handled it, is when you're doing community run projects, especially, and I don't know how you have your setup. Like, well, let me ask you this for context. So the Launchpad, how are you handling, like, how are you, is this a shared community project? Meaning people come to Launchpad, they provide their PFP, there's character development, there's lore development, there's some, and we can totally dive into this because I'm super curious, like there's some kind of community game system or some kind of thing where the community works with you guys to create those stories and to kind of craft a character, right? And maybe I'm assuming there's some voting system to kind of limit it down to 2 as opposed to I'm sure the hundreds that you got or whatever. And then is there, once the characters come out in the comic, is there some like like I'm curious about that process first, and then the second bucket is like, well, how do you? One of the things that we're working on is to making sure that everything we do is legal, right?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of projects out there, and again, I'm not going to throw shade at all because I genuinely do think everyone's trying to do their best. But there are some things that from our research, like is against the SEC, is against the law, is depends on the country you're from. Like there's so many traps I think that you can get into, and just to make sure that everybody gets a fair shake.
Yeah.
Like especially if the comic comes out, like is there a rewards program that says, hey, everybody, we're sharing in the pot and coming back to the community? Like, so I'm curious about those two things, I guess, is like, because like Launchpad is a super cool idea, 100%. Like we're kind of on that path as well in our own way. And I'm curious, like, well, that first bucket is like, how do you set it up so that it's fair and the system works? And then the second part is like, okay, once those are chosen, how do you protect both you and the community and everyone to ensure that legally it's okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does, absolutely. So with regard to the first part of the question, we did have a lot of entries. It showed just how strong the feeling is for creating something using, their own IPs. So that was great. We had a great response. How did we go about whittling them down? The community voted to whittle them down to, I think, 5. And then it was decided again by the community that they wanted to do that. But then also from that 5, they wanted me and Sergio, who's the main artist, to decide which ones out of the 5. I think we did it like that. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
And it seemed, that everybody was happy with that. Either that or it was the other way around. I can't remember, but we whittled it down one way or the other, and we made sure that the community was pretty much the driving force behind whoever won. The only problem that we had was we had one winner who won by quite a large margin, and then they sold their their PFP that they submitted. So it was like, oh my God, this is this is tough. That's not what we were going for. We were hoping that we would get somebody who was really driven and really wanted to build. But obviously, this person had their reasons, and we've got to respect that. It could be money, it could be anything, but they decided to do it, so fair enough. We then had to choose another winner to replace that person, and so we did, and everybody was happy, and we've gone from there. So that was that process. And then as regards the legals, I've looked into and contacted people in other projects and asked them, and I've also had a look at some of their documentation to see what legalese they're using to cover themselves. And so I've got fairly strong ideas in place there, but I will need, before we release issue 2 and sign off on everything with the Launchpad guys, I will need to make sure that I have my own legal team basically have a look over everything that is there to make sure that everything's okay. As for the other part of your question, what reward is there for the Launchpad entrance? So for them, we're still kind of deciding amongst ourselves. I'm leaving it in their capable hands as to what they want to do with regards to everything to do with the launch. I put forward suggestions, and others have put forward suggestions, and so we're going to have to come to a consensus amongst ourselves. But yes, the idea would be that there would be profit share there, and they would receive a share of the primary and secondary sales. And all that's left is to essentially finalize the finer details of that particular partnership, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. I've been looking at a same, very similar. Like we've talked to a lot of founders and looked at a lot of contracts, and a lot of it is public, and a lot of them are shared privately. And to our earlier conversational point, like people are very open about it because I think
Yeah.
everybody needs to share information so that they all get insight. And there's so many different approaches. There are, and again, without mentioning names, there are some approaches where it's treated as a non-exclusive licensing agreement, where they actually get to use it's really them signing one with you and vice versa. And and the way that the community determines the direction of the universe, it's more of like a Q&A, right? I'm sure you've seen this stuff where it's like, hey, we're going to ask the community some questions, and this will have a direct impact on the universe or the story or whatever it is that we're creating.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the questions, in my opinion, are rather mundane, meaning there's not a lot of impact, right? So what I mean by that is there's two types of questions, right? I'll just use Batman as a character. So Batman goes to Arkham Asylum. How does he get there? A car, A, the Batmobile, B, he walks, C, he takes a city bus, whatever. Where there's a lot of setup in that. The first is that it's already predetermined that Batman gets to Arkham Asylum, right?
Yeah.
So there is whatever decision you choose, A, B, or C, it has zero effect on the actual story. The second part is that the team or the HQ determines the mechanism by which he may get there, right? They're still determining whether he gets there by the Batmobile or whether he walks. So it's a very limited context of what the community can decide. On the flip side, the other question and the thing that I think we go after, and I think what you're talking about with Launchpad kind of goes after, is like, does Batman get to Arkham Asylum? And if not, why not? Right? That is a much different type of question with whatever answer happens directly affects the universe, right? That affects the story, and that has much more impact than the prior, right? And the other thing that I've seen out there, I mean, I've seen contracts. There is a project that has a contract with what they do, and they're partnered with a larger corporation. So I think it's a little more CYA, cover your assness. But they have inside of the contract, you're basically giving them the rights to the image on the NFT, whether or not you sell it. And when you sell it, if you flip it, they will actually track the wallet and airdrop them a copy of the contract to say that it's already been licensed. Right?
Yeah.
Which is a little heavy-handed in my opinion, like, because buyers don't know anything. Like, can you imagine buying, like, I mean, everyone's motivation is different. Maybe you just like the image and you're like, oh man, that's a crazy good looking character, I just want to own it. But maybe you have desire of like, oh, that's a crazy cool image, I can make a brand out of that, right? And then all of a sudden you buy it, and then next thing you know is you get a Polygon notice, a Polygon NFT.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? That's from like some legal company that says, by the way, this thing that you bought is actually our rights. You can't do anything with it because we have the rights to it. And
this is something though that OpenSea and other marketplaces should track. I mean, it's early days, but still, people have made some deals, haven't they, with various different companies. So I think it's really important. You know, when we got that person who said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I've sold, my PFP." Okay, but you know, what if we'd have done that after we've already made the comic and you've then sold it? So what happens then? Maybe the person who buys it doesn't know about Pinballer, doesn't want to be associated with us. Maybe it's not their thing and they don't want to be part of it, but they are. Their imagery is in it, and that's a real problem. And I'd be peeved, if I didn't want to be part of something, but I'm now forced. Like you say, if you get a little airdrop that says, "Hey, you're part of this team," I don't want to be part of that team.
Or the opposite. If let's say this person buys this NFT because this guy flipped it. All of a sudden they're surfing the internet or looking at Twitter, and all of a sudden they see a product that has their character in it as a main character or a supporting character, and all of a sudden it's like, what the hell is this? These guys are stealing my. They don't have any context. These guys are stealing my image. These guys are, and all of a sudden there's this chase that has to happen where it's like, if somebody flips the NFT, do you then have to like legally start chasing this NFT around to make sure that there's this legal thing? And then what happens if one person decides not to sign a legal agreement? Right. And so for an example, like, what was it? I'm terrible with names. There's a celebrity guy who was making, someone in chat will tell me, but there was a celebrity who was making an animated show off of his Bored Ape, and his wallet got compromised, and the ape got stolen. Right. Oh, and he had put in tens of thousands for the pilot and debuted the pilot. And then like, literally the day of the debut of the pilot, I think, is when the ape got stolen, and they canceled the entire thing. They had to cancel it because he no longer owned the IP because it had been stolen. So these are the things that I think, it's really, I will say one of the challenges, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this. One of the challenges that we have as a small project is we deliver as much as possible all the time, right? So I think considering our size, we do a really good job, and we can always do better, but I'm pretty happy with our output, and especially what we have coming up. It's nuts. But the NFT space, Web3 space moves so freaking fast, that I think there's even not necessarily a misconception as much as if you see everyone else seems to be moving really fast, and then you have a team that is moving at a fast pace for like normal Web 2, like the stuff that we've gotten done in 6 months is like ridiculous, right? Yeah. But in Web 3, we're considered pretty slow, like slow and steady, but we're not like rocket speed. And I think it's hard. One of the difficulties that I think we have, especially I have as a founder trying to express, is that it's difficult to explain the normal speed or the fast speed that we're going, especially when you see some of those other teams who are moving faster doing things that I know are not legal, right? I know 5 years from now, they're going to get a cease and desist, or they're going to be labeled as a security, or like they're just doing stuff to do it to get paid. And so they're moving very, very fast, and they're breaking things, but the things that they're breaking are things that may destroy the company later. Bite them. Yeah. Seth Green, Dusty, and J-Raw. Thanks, guys. What's up, J-Raw? Welcome. It was Seth Green was the actor.
Yes, yeah. I remember.
Do you know what I mean, though? It's a very hard thing to convey, and it's also from a founder's perspective, it's really hard to make sure that your contracts are done, and you want to make sure everyone's treated fairly, and it's a difficult part, right?
Exactly, yeah. There isn't an easy answer, is there? I'm not going to pretend that, hey, this is the answer, and it's this. There isn't an easy answer. And from my perspective, I've been fortunate because fortunate and unfortunate. I'm unfortunate in the sense that we didn't mint out, and we didn't get a massive influx of people interested in the first particular comic, because like you say, there's lots of comics out there, and it's difficult to sort out the good ones from the bad ones, and the real projects and the real builders from the people, like you say, who are perhaps rushing along and doing things that they shouldn't, and are not necessarily interested in the people who are buying their products. Whereas on the plus side for Pinballer, we've got a small but very, very loyal following who love the comic, they love the artwork, they love the story, and they want to, follow along, but they also want to perhaps get engaged and submit their IP too. And so it's a very strong community, even though it's quite small. Shout out in particular to Roll Dog, Vulcan, and Ninja Hike, because those guys have really, really kept the torch alive. Roll Dog and Vulcan have been building a fantasy football league. Now, I don't know anything about fantasy football. Cool. So awesome. I've said to them, hey guys, I don't know anything about this, but if you're really interested in this, and you think that this is going to help the community, and this is something that you love, then I'll support it, and we'll try and build that out. So yeah, we've had some, you know, real characters in the Discord in particular, and they're very, very supportive, and that's helped. It's helped to drown out the noise. So in my head, constantly I'm thinking, my marketing isn't good enough. I need to improve. I need to try do this, and this, and this. I'm on the ball in terms of getting the content out there, but like you say, I can't. There's only so much you can do. I was in Discord the other day, in a different Discord, and somebody said, again, no names mentioned, but somebody said, yeah, no, all credit to Pinballer, you know, love what they're doing, but would love, you know, more regular output, like, you know, once a month or something. And I'm thinking, holy shit, you know, issue 2 is like 40 pages, of tons of color artwork.
Yeah.
And I've also got these 2 launchpad entrants that I've had to negotiate with them to see what they want doing with their character, and it's a process.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just do that in a month. You know, I just can't physically do it. Nobody can. It's too much. And so you just have to get your head down, keep working. You believe in the project, and so you'll do anything you can to keep things going, to keep things alive. And your loyal community, who are really behind you, they give you, you know, the strength to keep fighting and to keep going on. And that's what, you know, all those guys have done. And there's loads of people I've not mentioned, and apologies to those people. You are all brilliant. Thank you to all the Pinballer community.
I think
brilliant.
I think you make a good point. There was something you said, especially about scaling and community building. There's a founder investor by the name of Paul Graham. Paul is the guy behind Y Combinator, which is an investment firm in Silicon Valley, and that's all over, I think. But you know, they Airbnb, you name it, like most of the top companies that are out now were backed by Y Combinator back in the day. So just he kind of was very brilliant in being able to nurture companies and raise funds for them and all that kind of stuff. And one of his golden tenets, one of his quotes is that you have to do things that don't scale when you're starting, right? And what that means is that there are certain things that when a company is small and young, there are many things that you can do that a larger company cannot do, right? When you're the size of Marvel one day or whatever, you're not going to be able to talk to all of the fans or all the community or all the customers all at once. There's just no possible way because the scale is too big. But when you're our size, it doesn't cost you anything except time to hop in the community, to talk, to play, to nurture, to get feedback. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What can we be better at? Like all of these kind of things. And tied into that is the fact that, you know, that one of the things that he's also stated many times is that it's more important. It's better to have, you know, 100 people if you have 100 people in your community that are hardcore, that you've just like gone to bat for and done everything you can to provide value. And likewise, like there's a really good vibe in that small, not tight knit community. That's worth way more than, I'd take that any day over 100,000, a number of 100,000 where no one gives a shit. You know what I mean? It's so much harder to do, but if you start small and keep it tight and just slowly, organically build it out, you know, eventually it wins. Do you know what I mean? It wins at the end. This is how every great company starts. And I think the other thing that's so interesting about what you mentioned, and I wrote it down, was I think really what we're playing, especially as like these smaller projects, it's a game of longevity, because, you know, the NFT space is not that old. And I would suggest that, like, I think some of the earliest ones are like 2014 or 2018, 2017, like very, very recently, right? And I would say that even NFTs with utility associated, because before that, NFTs like CryptoPunks and, you know, there were basic utility, but the type of utility where we're really seeing communities built around nowadays, that's maybe been around for a year and a half, maybe.
Sure.
So there is no longevity yet established in the NFT space. If adult fantasy, if pinballer, if these groups, these projects can last the tide for an extended period of time and just consistently deliver no matter what the deadline is. If you can only do a book every 6 months, that's totally normal. Like that's not like slow. That's actually like, I mean, there are very professional comic artists who can produce like 140 or 50 page book by themselves a year, period. Like it's just a lot of work. So
Yeah.
if you can get to a schedule and just stick with it and make it through, next thing you know, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line, not only are you OG, like quote unquote OG in the space, but you've established your pattern and then everybody starts to accept it, I think.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
nobody cares. What people care the most about is that, and in my opinion, is that you do what you say you're going to do and you're able to deliver on what you say you can deliver on. If you say, now, if you came out and said, hey, like take us, for example, if I came out tomorrow and said, we're going to do a weekly comic, right? Not only would I never say that, but if we did say that, people are going to expect it. And so if you miss those deadlines and you don't deliver on what you talk about or you promise, people are going to think you're full of shit and they're going to run away. As well they should, right? Now, if you say, hey, we have this drop coming up at this date and this time, or what have you, and you just keep delivering, just like little clockwork, hey, look, we're just doing what we said we're going to do. We're not Bored Ape Yacht Club. We're not, Punk's Comic. We're not, we're not Azuki or the other 100 companies that have made $50 million plus, but you just kind of do what you say you're going to do. All of a sudden there's a respect and there's an attraction and then there's a safety, right? Like,
absolutely.
Just speaking for myself, like, when we did our first launch in December and you have to fight FUD and people saying, I mean, this is like the height of 2021 also. So like, we come in and people are like, this is a scam or this is nonsense. This is crap. What is this? Blah, blah, blah. Like these guys, all this stuff. And there's a terror. I mean, I was afraid straight up. The NFT space is unlike anything else where I've never been in any other business that expects you to sell out of 100% of your quantity supply in one day. You know what I mean? It's like going into a grocery store. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we sold out. Like that doesn't.
All the cabbages are gone.
Yeah, the whole store is empty. We opened yesterday, grand opening. Everything is empty. Thank you, goodbye. But there's this utter fear of it. And now that we've started to launch more and more and more, and we've been out for a while, at least internally, that fear is gone. When we get somebody who's fudding, it doesn't happen that often, knock on wood, anymore. But when it does, when new people come in and say, what is this? This isn't, this is crap. You're like, cool. Sorry. We've been around for a long time now. We hope you'll stay and we hope we can help you out. If not,
yeah,
we'll do our best.
Totally agree with you. It boiled down to, I always might get the quotation wrong, but the one from Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. You've just got to get your head down, just keep building, try not take the FUD to heart, and just let the community G you up. Just let them keep building you up because they love it, you love it, the passion's there. Don't get disheartened, just keep fighting, and that's what I've done. I've stopped, taking any of the other crap into my head. It's not helpful. Mm-hmm. It just affects your imagination and everything. So it's best just to kind of let it blow past you and just keep building. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you look at it too deeply, all of a sudden you start questioning your awesome project, and you're like, why don't I just launch a project, call it Ass Goblins, and make a lot of money?
Yeah, absolutely. It's soul destroying sometimes. I've sat on the couch and I've thought, I've poured my heart and soul into this, and I've been so picky and particular in lots of ways, and the artist has as well, and yet there's these other projects, like you say, Ask Goblins or whatever it might be, and they just sell out immediately, and it's like, come on, they're not going to be around. That's probably a rug pull, and they're not going to build anything.
Yeah.
But that's part of the problem, isn't it? We're still in the very early days of this community, and there's a lot of people that are in it just to make a bit of cash.
Yeah.
There's some brilliant people in it, yourself included. There's some brilliant people who want to build and want to create something wonderful, but there's also a lot of people who just want to make money. And I think it's our job to try and tap into the people who either want to build with us and want to come along for the ride, and also the people that really just enjoy what we do and also share that passion. And that's the difficulty, isn't it? Trying to find those people as opposed to the other people. I've not cracked that one yet. If you crack it, please, let me know. How do you do it?
We just continue. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's a secret sauce to it. We just try to be ourselves and try to do our best to attract the right people.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious. Like, people come in, we've had 2 launches now. By the end of this year, we'll have several more. And people come in, and some people just get, we had one person who said, "Hey, I minted from the site. What is this about?" And which is funny, because on our mint page, it's got the mint box, and the whole rest of the page is nothing. I mean, it's too much information about, like, it's detailed diagrams and white papers, and it's like so much information. And so they just clearly didn't see it, didn't read it. And you try to help out as best you can, and be normal. Just be yourself and be helpful. And I think over time, it's also style. You know what I mean? Like Pinballer has such a cool style. It's going to attract the audience that it attracts. You know what I mean? There are people that are going to be super attracted to it, and there are going to be people who are like, "I don't care about that stuff," and that's totally fine. There are people that love comics and people that don't. Oh, hold on. Whistle Piggy says, much prefer seeing small guys community innovating ways to thrive rather than large corporations taking over to make things safe for consumption, but then killing the creativity. Yep.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Totally agree with that.
And it's totally true.
That's a big bugbear of mine. Just watching TV and film these days, I can't do it most of the time. I'll switch something on and I'll switch it off within 5 minutes, because I can see that this is just corporate sanitized bullshit, and there's no creativity, there's no story. It's just a rehash, or again, it's been sanitized in some way. And
it's
I'm
fear.
not interested. Yeah, it's a fear. Yeah, they're going to offend somebody or some, whatever. And so we have to, and I'm not interested in it. I just want to tell a fun story, and that's all it's about. It's just about a story, a fun story that you can enjoy. I'm not trying to put in any messages about anything else. I'm not sanitizing anything. I'm just making sure that it's good, harmless fun. That's what we should be doing as storytellers, but that's not what I'm seeing in a lot of the mainstream kind of TVs and films. So yeah, I completely agree with that statement.
Yeah, there's having worked in some of these big companies, like it really is true. Like it's a culture of fear, and it's a culture of capitulation, right? If somebody has a bigger voice than you, then you get afraid that you're going to lose your job, so you just do it. Just cave to whatever it is, And I think that's why you're having so many stories. Like, you would think right now we are exposed to more content than in the history of the planet. Like, there is more content available right now every single day, new content every day, than was ever invented in the history of mankind from like the whole thing, right? And you would think that there would be more quality content, and there's not. And a lot of especially from these larger companies that have access and money to top producers or writers or artists or whoever. And I think instead it ends up becoming about other things, right? It's not really about the fans. It's not really about just telling a fun story. And like one of our goals is I personally, speaking for myself, I miss the fun and excitement and sheer, like, sometimes even the sheer stupidity of creating something that's just puts a smile on your face. I mean, it's like everybody forget, or a large number of people, I should say, seem to have forgotten that all of this stuff, A, isn't real, and B, is about escapism.
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to get you away and like just jump into a story. Hey, here's Pinballer. It's not real. Like let's just jump into a world, learn a story, learn about some new characters, and have a fucking ride, man.
Yep.
Like it's okay. And I've even recognized this in myself. Like whereas in my teenage years and my 20s, I was so hardcore. I'm still hardcore into comics, obviously, but like my approach to comics in the 90s was that I was going after the best storytellers and the best artists because at the time I was chasing that in my craft, right? I getting the best, who had the best backgrounds, who had the best anatomy, who was the best storyteller. These guys, this guy's thumbnails are the best, right? Like whatever. And so a lot of the stuff that the artists that I didn't like at the time, I felt didn't hit that quality marker of what I was looking for at the time. Now that I'm older and I'm always trying to improve and I'm never going to be artistically where I want to be. That's kind of the point. But now that I'm past that point in my 20s, I'm looking back at some of the artists and comics that I absolutely hated as a 20 something or as a teenager, and I'm loving them. They're crazy. Like the arms are ridiculously big. Like I totally would have never loved this. Like this art style is not what I'm looking at anymore, right?
Right.
But the books had so much fun and so much attraction, and it was so clear that the people creating it were just having a blast. Like it was so much entertainment on the page that you could sense and see the laughter and the smiles at the studio or behind the drawing table.
Yeah.
Like they weren't taking it so serious, and neither should you. You know,
Yep.
not everything has to be Watchmen. You know what I mean?
We're on the same page
Yeah.
completely.
So we've been talking a lot about like how difficult this stuff is to manage, and you mentioned something and I wanted to circle back on. So it is incredibly difficult to manage all of this stuff as a small team, right? So how as a founder, how do you break up your day? What's a day in the life look like?
It's mostly liaising with the artists on the comic and making sure that everything is proceeding as planned. Occasionally, there's some hiccups. For instance, would be at the moment, Sergio had finished working on one of the Launchpad stories. I had handed off to the colorist. He'd finished, and then what happened? I can't remember. I think I was doing a mock-up of the lettering, and I decided that the flow didn't work for me. It just didn't. As a kind of a visual storyteller, it just didn't work. There was something amiss. And so I went back to Sergio and said, what if we mix some of these panels up, we move them around a bit, enlarge this one, and I changed the layout of what he'd originally done. And he said, you know what, I agree, but if you do what you've said, then the lettering won't quite fit in place. And I was like, and he's really good at actually knowing how everything fits in. So when he said that, I was like, oh, okay, can you see what you can do? And so he did, and then he did some new drawings as well to make it all kind of work. And then he's handed it back. So it was originally like 4 or 5 pages, and now they've been reworked. So now the coloring has to be done again. So obviously I've already paid for that to be done the first time, but I'm willing to do it again because I wasn't happy with it. You know, it wasn't exactly how I wanted it. And again, going back to the original conversation, this is the beauty of comics. It's not $100 million budget. Yes, it's money, and yes, it's a ball ache when it happens, but I can correct it, and so I want to do that, partly because, A, it's a passion project for me, but also, you know, I've got a responsibility to the person that the IP is based on. I want to make sure that it's high quality for them, and they can go away and they're proud and happy of it. And if I'm not happy with it, then I shouldn't be handing it off, and I shouldn't be just saying, oh yeah, that'll do. I'm not going to do that ever. And if it means that I have to pay more money to fix it, then I will. And so we occasionally have little hiccups like that, and it's because I'm a little bit picky about certain things, and so I do like to correct them. And then, yeah, it's me coming up with ideas to do with marketing, or speaking to Sebastian about what can we do to make the contracts, the future contracts, a little bit more interesting. So things like the burn mechanisms to reduce issue one in particular, because that's a big one that the community, you know, keep asking for. Reduce the pinballer issue one numbers. So I've been working on a number of different ideas as to how to tackle that, not just with the Star God NFT, which gets you the pinball table, but also with bringing into play a special edition of Pinballer, which collates the first 4 issues, which is the entire story arc, into one NFT. So it's like a collector's edition that will have a physical copy. It will have alternate covers. It will have its own little short story that's unique to that particular special edition. So it's a chunk of my day is idea generation. You know, how can I add to this project? How can I add value? How can I fix my mistakes? How can I drive more value to it? And it's not necessarily just monetary value. It's you know, value in terms of the person who's bought it thinks, well, you know, this really was worth what I've, you know, invested in this, what I've paid for it. I've really enjoyed it, and I want to see more. So yeah, it's just about idea generation and constantly trying to drive more value and just to do the best I can for the project. That's most of my day.
That's awesome. And then like, so I guess you have to kind of bounce between that and like Discord. Like there's always the hats of like production and marketing and having to balance that out too, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, the Discord it's not buzzing, should we say that. There's a loyal community in there who pop in every day, and I go in and chat to them, and we shoot the breeze. And like I say, a couple of them are putting together fantasy football, and we also discuss ideas for future issues, and I take suggestions from people, and yeah, we just chat and shoot the breeze about the project and anything else that comes to mind. But like you say, that's another thing that you as a founder really you should be doing. You should be paying attention to what's happening in Discord and on Twitter, and you know, trying to just get some feedback, because obviously it could help the project. And it also keeps people up to date with what you're doing, so they don't just think that you're, you know, doing nothing at home.
Right. I swear I'm working. I swear we're doing
something. Absolutely.
So what's coming up next?
Next will be issue 2. So as soon as we're all boxed off with the Launchpad stories and they're all inked and lettered, then we need to make sure, as we said before, the legalese is all sorted out, everything is signed off on before we go ahead, and then we'll release that. But there will also be burn mechanisms in place so that you will have 3 different random covers for issue 2. There'll be 1 each of the community IP, so they'll have their own cover, and Pinball will also have its own cover. When you mint, it will be a random cover, but you can choose to burn copies of issue 1 in order to guarantee all 3 covers of issue 2. And I'm also going to look at releasing the special edition around this time too. Now, obviously, the special edition will be the first 4 comics, which is the first story arc, but we haven't finished comics 3 and 4, so that will be an updated NFT essentially. It will just be updated as and when those issues are released.
Awesome. And now I gotta ask, because it's comics, have you thought about doing like physical editions?
Physical, absolutely, yeah. I said originally on the roadmap was more of a guideline, and I did specify from the beginning that I will do everything in my power to do everything on the roadmap. But if we didn't mint out, then obviously I can't guarantee anything, right. Which I think is fair.
Totally.
As for the issue 1, I said I would do physicals if we've minted out. Now, with the burn, maybe we do, maybe we don't. If we do, then I will do physicals for the standard issue 1. As regards to the special edition of issue 1, there will be definitely physicals of that, which is the compendium edition, which contains the 4 stories. So as soon as the 4 stories are done, there will definitely be a special edition physical. So because I've said it on this show, I have to stick with that now, because obviously it's on the internet forever.
Yes.
People will be like, but you promised.
Yes.
Yeah, so I will make sure that happens.
That's awesome, man. So where can people get in touch with you? What's the best way if people are new and they want to learn more about Pinballer? Where should they go?
Going to the website first. So it's pinballer.xyz. You can check out everything about the project there. I'll be updating it with new information, because obviously issue 2 is coming out soon, and but all of the information's on there. The Twitter link is on there, and obviously the mint button if you're interested in buying a copy. And yeah, you can then go to Twitter. You can see what we've been posting. We've been posting lots of previews from issue 2. There's some really beautiful artwork in issue 2. It really does take it up to another level. I was happy with issue 1, but issue 2 just takes it to another level, because we both hit a groove and we both are developing this style.
Yeah.
So they can go to Twitter, and yeah, you can find us on Discord. There's a Discord link on the Pinballer Twitter as well. It's at
awesome.
Pinballer Comics on Twitter.
At Pinballer Comics on Twitter. And how much is the mint if someone wanted to mint Pinballer #1?
You've actually.
I threw you a curve. I'm just asking for myself.
I remember. It's so hot here. I'm in the UK, and it's like 38 degrees or something, and with no ACs. I've just sat by a window. It's so hot. So I'm sorry. My mind's frazzled. 0.042.
Great. Okay.
Issue
Perfect.
1. Issue 2, we're looking at 0.025. I think we've.
Awesome! Wow, fantastic.
Okay.
Awesome.
We will have burn function for issue 1 to get issue 2.
Oh, I see. So
look out for that. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Whistle Piggy popped in. He said 0.042. He's got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Riley, man, thank you so much. I appreciate this. This is excellent.
Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Absolutely. And everybody out there, thank you guys so much for joining us. So that's pinballer.xyz, pinballer.xyz. And then, of course, the other links to Twitter and everywhere else that Riley mentioned. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And we, of course, love to have you guys here. Please leave a comment, please subscribe, please like, please notifications, all the stuff that you're supposed to do on YouTube that I can never remember. Totally fine, just do it, please. Anyway, it really helps us out. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you in the Adult Fantasy Discord, and with that, we will see you next time. What's up, Obscar Stan? What's up? How you doing, man? Appreciate you as always. Everybody, thank you guys so much. We will check you out next time.